Hey, what's up everybody? Ravy here, and today what we're doing is we're actually answering a question that I see posted from time to time, and I had myself at one point. You know, how strong are 5/8 racks versus 1 inch? Like, can the accessories like hold the same amount of weight? Um, what are those differences? Now, I've done a video comparing the difference between 5/8 and 1 inch. That's not what we're doing here. We're not comparing the racks or the hole size or the types of accessories they have. We're specifically focusing on the strength. Now you can see here, I've got a 1 inch bar. I mean, we literally use, make dumbbells and bars out of 1 inch steel, but we don't do it for 5/8. So how much stronger is 1 inch? Like, can these hold the same amount of weight? Do we get to this point of human limitation where it doesn't really matter? That's kind of what I want to explore here, because clearly these are two different sizes. Clearly this 1 inch is stronger, but does it make a difference? What do accessories say from different companies? Like, are there differences in the amount that, this pin and pipe can hold, this 5/8 inch pin and pipe can hold versus a 1 inch? If I'm lifting 500 pounds, is this going to support it versus a 1 inch? Like, let's explore and kind of find out the answer to that question. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the computer and we're going to look at different kinds of bolts. We're going to look at some different accessories and some different examples of how these two sizes are different. All right. Okay, so now I'm on the computer, and one of the first things I did is I asked myself, there has to be like numbers online where we're showing like how these bolts will bend based on how much force is applied to them. So what I did is I came up to the screen that I have right now, which shows the proof load and clamp load, and there's all kinds of different measurements you can get for bolts. And I realized a few things. First of all, I learned that bolts are based on grade. Like, grade 2 is not as strong as grade 5, like different quality of bolts, like 2 versus 5 versus 8, that kind of thing. I also learned that like proof load and clamp load, like the proof load of a 5/8 bolt is 12,000 pounds. So like the loads that they're telling me these bolts are designed for is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times as much as like the strongest human can lift. And then I also realized that these aren't really telling me the information that I'm looking for. They're not going to tell me like when's a bolt's going to fail, because that depends on like the length and what kind of force is being applied and all kinds of different stuff. So like these measurements weren't even helpful. I just know that like using these kinds of bolts, they're way strong enough for certain kinds of load. They're like overly strong, but that still didn't help me. So then what I asked myself after I dug into this and realized this wasn't the information, this was not the kind of objective information I was looking for, I said, okay, well, maybe we've had instances of these things breaking before. So I started to dig and look at like J-cup failure, safety pin failure, anything that used the pins of like 5/8 or 1 inch, accessories to see like when did they fail, how did they fail, are people lifting so much that they're breaking 5/8 inch or 1 inch accessories that we need to even make them stronger than that? So I started to do some research and I found a couple examples. So the first example that I'm going to pull up here, you can actually see it on the screen. This is a 1 inch safety pin. And this looks like a Titan T2 or maybe a Rep 1000, PR1000 rack. I will say, you can see basically what happened here. This is a Reddit post. He dropped 300 pounds at the top of his squat and his safety bar saved him and did not break, but it bent. So we have an instance of dropping 300 pounds and a safety bar bending. Now the one thing, and this is also a 1 inch safety bar, but one of the things I want to point out is that since this is a cheaper rack, the lower end of Titan and Rep racks, this is a cheap safety pin. So this isn't really telling me what a high quality safety pin from like Rep, Titan, or Rogue would bend if 300 pounds was dropped. This also didn't have like the pipes on it either, but you can see that it worked, it bent, but it's not, again, not telling me too much, but still interesting that I found that it bent. So then what I did is I looked at a couple examples of J-cups failing. So this first one is by Rogue. This was in 2011. Rogue had some instances of their J-cups actually snapping. You can see this is the recall. and the weld between the bracket and the pin that holds the barbell bracket in place can break. So I thought this was interesting. So I said, okay, so this is a 5/8 inch pin, and I'm noticing that the J-cup broke. Now, I said, are there other instances in the industry where this happened? And I was able to find one. And that happened very recently with Rep Fitness. You can see that the J-cup broke while benching. And again, the 5/8 inch pin snapped, and it was 5/8 inch as well. And I started to ask myself, does this have anything to do with the pin? And I came up with a couple conclusions, and I'll kind of explain how I came to them first of all. And I'm going to say that both of these instances, I think, had nothing to probably do with the fact that it was 5/8. First of all, the pin itself didn't bend or snap on these J-cups from Rogue or Rep. What happened is it was a bad weld. And it happens so non-often that this was Rogue 2011. So this hasn't happened again. Rogue apparently fixed the problem, and this hasn't happened for 12 years. So we're talking like this isn't common and doesn't happen again. With the Rogue Rep, this happened 2 months ago, and this was the only instance of this kind of break I could find. I mean, there are other instances of safety straps breaking and J-cups breaking from other brands and these brands, but it was all because of like different parts of them, like this little piece right here broke on a J-cup that I could find, or like the safety strap, like stitching broke, but it had nothing to do with the pins. I was only concerned about the pins. So I found 2 instances of this happening, and it seemed like the cause was because of the weld, not the pin itself. And it seemed to happen so not often that I think it's like, we're talking about like, let's say 10 million of these were sold, and there's less than 100 that broke. And we're talking like a 0.0001% chance of product failure, which is probably normal, what you'd kind of expect. And then I said, well, okay, so I really don't think that the size of the pin had any bearing on the welds failing here. So I, again, didn't see any difference. So then what I did is I said, well, if I can't really find any instances of these pins breaking, maybe people have done tests before where they've tried to break this stuff. So let's see what's out there online and see what happens when people tried to break this. So the first thing I got was, I got a video from Garage Gym, Coop, trying to break a J-cup. He compared Rogue versus Titan 5/8 inch J-cups, putting over 800 pounds on the J-cups and jumping on them. Couldn't break the J-cup. So we know that 5/8 inch pins, J-cups, aren't snapping with 800 pounds and someone jumping on them. So, okay, so I was like, okay, so that's really interesting. Next thing I look at these dudes, and I'll play like a second of this for you, from Westside Barbell. I mean, look at how many plates that guy has on the, you can just see the picture here, the guy has on the rack. He's literally doing rack pulls and dropping that weight on that crusty, old, looks like it's about to fall apart rack at Westside Barbell. You know, these are the strongest guys in the world. They're using, I mean, that's where 5/8 inch came from. Westside Spacing came from, is Westside. He's doing rack pulls, dropping this. You can just see 1 second of it. You can see that. Completely fine. Nothing happens to the ball. Nothing happens. He's dropping 100, more than you're lifting. He's dropping on 5/8 pins. They're not bending or breaking. So, okay. So we have that. Then we have this test. Another test that I found. 500 kilos. So that's 1,100. This is 1,100 pounds. 1,100 pounds. This is, again, a 5/8 inch rack. Now we're dropping it on 5/8 inch flip safeties. So you can see 1,100 pounds being dropped on 5/8 inch flip safeties. See what happens when this drops. Completely fine. I mean, I'll tell you what, if it was going to snap, it would have snapped right there. Okay. So then what I did is I said to myself, let me shut that off. Then what I did is I said to myself, okay, I can't really, I looked at the weights online. I couldn't find differences. I looked at if the J-cups were failing or any accessories are failing, and I really couldn't find any that were because of the pins themselves. I looked at some drop tests, and I couldn't really find where we actually had dropped enough weight, even 1,100 pounds, to break 5/8 inch pins, let alone 1 inch. So then what I did is I went to the manufacturers' websites and I looked at all their accessories. And you can see I broke this down by like 5/8 versus 1 inch and cost. And then I have what the difference is that they have listed on the manufacturer's website on how much weight these can support. And basically what I found, you can see I did it for Rep, Rogue, and Titan. Basically every single one of their accessories is rated for the same exact weight, which the only difference I actually found was one thing in Titan. One, their safety spotter arms for 5/8 are rated for 1500 and the 1 inch are rated for 1680. And honestly, I doubt they tested that. There's so many inconsistencies on Titan's like pictures about their weight limits that I almost feel like that was an error. Between Rep, you can look at all the stuff I found. J-cup, spotter arms, safety straps, flip down safeties. No difference in strength that they've told you. I mean, clearly there's some kind of difference, but they've told us that there isn't a difference. They're rated for the same thing. Rogue, spotter arms, J-cups, safety straps, plate storage. No difference in the weight that these products, that the manufacturer's telling us these weights can support. Same thing with Titan for all of these, except that one spotter arms that I pointed out, and the lowest was 1500, which none of you are lifting. Okay, so what are my conclusions here? What did I come up with when I compared the strength of these things? So first of all, it's very clear, just by looking at the bolt strength and rating, that 1-inch bolts are definitely stronger. I mean, you can feel that they're stronger. It's no question. What I've come up with, though, is that based on like things failing, what people can lift, what manufacturers are telling us, is that we've gotten to this point where 5/8 inch bolts are beyond what any of us are going to be able to lift. So they don't even bother testing them that high because you can't even hold that much weight on the rack that they're going to break. So basically what happens is we've gotten to this point of diminishing returns. It's the same thing with like television. And let me tell you the example with television. We get to this point where it's like we go from 4K to 8K. Your eyes can't really tell the difference because our eyes just aren't that good. And we're going to keep going up to like 16K, 32K, and like our eyes can't tell the difference. Same thing with like megapixels with cameras. We get to this point of diminishing returns. We're at that point apparently with weightlifting stuff. So if you're unsure about the strength difference between 5/8 and 1-inch and considering what rack you want, know that yes, 1-inch are stronger, but know that strength probably isn't helping you whatsoever because you're never going to lift enough to be able, I don't think a human will be able to lift enough that they're going to break 5/8 to have to need 1-inch. There are other differences between the two. You can watch my other video or look them up, but as far as strength goes, it's not something that's going to impact you. I learned a lot by creating this video and kind of doing this research and trying to figure out like the strength difference between these two. And I was kind of surprised that we haven't like done enough tests to really break 5/8 for N 1-inch and say like 5/8 breaks when you put this amount on a J cup and 1-inch breaks when you put X amount. Like I'm really surprised. And I wonder if like other welds and stuff would fail before the actual pins would. So it's kind of interesting to see and pay attention to. And I learned a lot. I hope you did as well. And you have any other questions about it, leave some comments. Or you have any other experiences or anything, you find a cool story about a pin breaking, I'd love to hear it. Post it. But otherwise, later everybody.